Hello, and welcome back for another speed build video today.
Now we're doing something that's a little bit spooky today.
But in all seriousness, if you haven't heard of Lizzie Borden, you'll know everything there is to know about this mysterious case where she may or may not have committed a double homicide against her father and her stepmother. Now you might be thinking, what in the world does that have to do with today's video? And that is because I recreated Lizzie Borden's Maplecroft mansion. Now before we dive into this is not the house that the murders happened in. This is actually on French Street, and Maplecroft is the one that she bought actually after the trial. So this is her later home, and then the murders happened only just a few blocks away from this house over on 2nd Street, and it's now a museum and B&B. So this is more of her afterlife, not so much the crime scene that I'm recreating. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this instead of the murder house is because there's actually a website online where you can tour the house. So it's not so much just about getting the floor plan, but I actually imitated the entire house as far as the furniture, from the flooring to the ceilings. I wanted to do more than just the floor plan, but this was a really cool website. You can actually see it floor by floor, and you can see it from like top down view, which is extremely helpful. So it's a really cool website to actually see even in dollhouse mode. So you can click on the different floors. But I just thought I'd show you all this. I'm gonna have it linked down below if you wanna like enjoy watching during the speed build, so you can have it as a reference or just enjoy touring it while I give you the backstory about this double homicide. Now, all of this happened on August 4th, but I wanna give y'all some pretext that led up to the events that occurred on August 4th. So before we get there, a little bit of context. I have my handy dandy Google Doc open, so I'm gonna be reading through some notes that I put together here. But Fall River was a booming mill town, and it had a lot of social divide. So there was old money families that were up on the hill and middle class streets like 2nd Street that were closer to the bustle. So the Bordens were wealthy, but Andrew was famously frugal. So the 2nd Street house still lacked indoor plumbing and modern conveniences that many of their peers had by the 1890s. And that thrift and the choice to live off the hill fed a slow burn of frustration at home, to say the least. So family dynamics were tight. Lizzie and Emma were active at Central Congregational Church. Lizzie taught Sunday school and joined women's clubs, while relations with their stepmother, Abby, were cool enough that Lizzie called her Mrs. Borden. Years earlier, Andrew deeded the property connected to Abby's family, which angered the sisters so much that he later deeded the old Ferry Street house to them to restore peace. They sold it back to him just before the murders, so just keep that in mind. There had already been a scare at the house on June 24th, 1891. There was a daytime burglary of cash and jewelry from Andrew and Abby's bedroom. No arrest, but suspicion fell inside the family. From then on, doors inside and out were kept locked, and Andrew started keeping the master bedroom key on the sitting room mantle, a habit that will matter a little bit later when we get into it and talk about the entrances, exits, and who could be where. So in the spring and summer of 1892, little frictions started to pile up, and a cloakmaker recalled Lizzie calling Abby a mean old thing. Gotta love the 1890s. And in May 1892, Andrew killed pigeons roosting in the family barn, and Lizzie had recently set up a roost there. So the pigeon story shows up everywhere. The fact of the killing is documented, though claims that Lizzie was heartbroken over it are debated by historians. And then by July 1892, tensions were high enough that the sisters took a break in New Bedford, and Lizzie even stayed in a nearby rooming house for a few days before returning to 2nd Street about a week ahead of the murders. And then the house ran on habit. So again, to this idea of habit, there were multiple locks, doors fastened, that mantle key, and a maid who was often outdoors at chore time. So all of that will matter when we map where Abby, Andrew, Bridget, and Lizzie were minute by minute on August 4th. Okay, so a little bit of backstory with some events that I think lend a hand to how you can think about who maybe did it. I think those events are important, but just set the scene. We're in Fall River, Massachusetts. It's Thursday, August 4th, 1892. In the 2nd Street house where Andrew Borden, his wife Abby, their maid Bridget Sullivan, and Lizzie's uncle John Morse, I know these are a lot of people, but Lizzie's uncle, John Morse, had slept over and left after breakfast. Later that morning, Abby went upstairs to make the guest bed. So that's the stepmother. She was attacked there, first struck above the ear and hit many more times. Hours later, Andrew returned, lay down on the sitting room sofa, and was killed with about 10 or 11 blows. So from the jump, the timeline is a little bit like it's brutal, but also quiet. And Bridget was outside washing windows and later rested in the attic. So around 11 o'clock, Lizzie called out, "Father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him." And then a neighbor helped Bridget look for Abby, and they found her upstairs in the guest room. So two little notes on the timing. The city hall bell struck 11 right before the alarm was raised. Responders later noted Abby's body was cooler while Andrew's wounds were still bleeding. Abby had died much earlier. Doors mattered in that house. The front door had 3 locks on it. When Bridget struggled with them, she muttered, "Pshaw." That's actually historically referenced. And testified she heard Lizzie laugh from the stairs right then. Prosecutors later leaned on that. If Lizzie truly was upstairs at that moment, Abby's body was already in the guest room, visible from the landing. So that puts Lizzie upstairs, and you could see Abby's body as soon as you go upstairs. There's no way you can miss it. It was visible from the landing. On top of all of this, police work was awful, to say the least. Early on, they didn't even search Lizzie's bedroom because she, quote, wasn't feeling well. That would never stand today, by the way. If you told cops that, "Oh, I'm not feeling well, you can come back tomorrow and search my room." No. And they never found a bloody outfit. In the basement, though, they did find a hatchet head with a broken handle, cleaner than you'd expect, one of several items the state floated as the possible weapon. Now, 2 details became the spine of the prosecution's story, and one was that 2 days before the murders, a drug clerk said Lizzie tried to buy prussic acid, which is a deadly poison. And then at trial, the judges kept that out as too remote. So the jury never even heard it, but the newspapers did, and they ran with it. And then secondly, there was the burned dress. So on the Sunday after the murders, August 8th, so a few days later, Lizzie burned a light blue house dress in the kitchen stove, saying it was ruined with paint. Her friend Alice Russell testified to that. The defense said it was innocent. The prosecution called it consciousness of guilt. And then when you consider this aspect of the barn, Lizzie told officials she'd gone to the barn loft to look for fishing sinkers, and she'd been eating pears around that time. Investigators later testified the loft dust looked undisturbed and that suffocating August heat, which made the alibi seem unlikely. So obviously, if you're talking about a loft of a barn where dust is going to collect, if you were up in the loft, you would at least see footprints of some sort. It was completely undisturbed. So, I mean, there's no proof that she was there. There's no proof that she wasn't there to an extent, but there's more proof that she wasn't there than that she was there, if that makes sense. You can tell, I'm a little biased in my storytelling of this, but I will play devil's advocate, and I'll give some things on both sides as to whether you can form your own opinion on to whether she did it or not. And then there's this issue of the note. So Lizzie said Abby had been called away by a messenger's note that morning, and no note or messenger was ever found. So it's completely circumstantial, which just makes it seem like she's trying to come up with alibis that just can't actually be, justified or founded in evidence. So let's talk about the day before. The whole household had stomach trouble. So people talked about bad bread or leftover mutton. That bit is why the prussic acid story looms so large in the press, because remember, the newspapers did catch wind of that and they ran with it. So even though the judges excluded it from the jury, that was something that was well known in the community at the time from the newspaper. If you have prussic acid, maybe it was put in the food the day before the murders everyone was sick, but maybe it just wasn't enough to kill them. I don't know. But it is a bit, what's going on here? What happened? So underneath the headlines were money and houses and a very strict household. So months before the murders, Andrea had given property to Abby's relatives. Keep in mind, just a little bit more about the backstory. And that angered the Borden sisters. So again, getting to that motive that I talked about very briefly at the start of this, they acquired the property, but then sold it back, right? So Lizzie was an active church member and, referred to Abby as Mrs. Borden, all this stuff that I talked about, not mother. It wasn't very formal. It wasn't like super, it didn't seem like they had a great relationship. I have step parents. I refer to them as their first name. I don't say Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. I just say their name. So it is a little weird. And you would think that their relationship, or that she didn't like her very much if she referred to her as Mrs. Borden instead of Abby. So that's just a reminder. I think that it wasn't quite a good situation for the family. So getting into the devil's advocate here, I'm going to start with why she might have done it. So the case for guilt from the era's prosecutors and many modern commentators. So again, this is not just my opinion. This is looking historically at reputable sources to see what the case was. And there was opportunity, right? So when Abby was killed upstairs, Morris was out, Andrew was out, Bridget was outdoors. No one was there. And the only adult known to be inside was Lizzie. And then there's the note that never existed. There was no messenger, no piece of paper. So it just seems like she made that up out of thin air. The dress burning 2 days later is highly suspicious. I mean, I don't think that's something that she usually did. I mean, also, if it was paint, what was she painting? Why was she painting it? There's no question about the paint. So I don't know if they even had paint, if they found paint on the property, the premises, anywhere to justify that. It had to have been red paint. Was it red? We don't even know the color. There are a lot of speculations that go on with this, but again, I'm just presenting things that are entirely factual. I didn't want to go down the Reddit rabbit hole and things like that. I'm just presenting to y'all very strict facts from reputable sources and historians and such. So the basement hatchet head was another one that was suspiciously clean and handleless. So she struck a lot of times. I think total between the two, it was like 28 times. I mean, this was from a place of anger, these murders for both of these people. And oftentimes when that happens and is the case, I watch a lot of murder documentaries. Okay, just don't judge me. But oftentimes that is due to the person being close to that person, not a random stranger. Usually random strangers don't do super intense, deadly things like that. And then you have shifting statements. So an alibi that didn't quite fit the dust and the heat from the loft. And you bundle all of that and you get this very easy, clear to see in this day and age sign that Lizzie did it. But yet, here are a few reasons why people argue that she didn't do it. Again, I'm biased, but I also want to play devil's advocate because we don't know. She was acquitted, and I'll get into the trial in just a second. But there was no direct physical evidence that tied her to the killings. There was no blood spatter on her person identified. There was no proven weapon. Early police missteps and a contaminated scene. I don't know that is justified and that she didn't do it, rather than the fact that we can't prove that she did do it because of that happening. That was just a huge misstep in the police force then. Gender class bias. So in 1892, many struggled to imagine a church-going, upper middle class woman wielding that kind of brutality. In this day and age, we could see it both ways. Not to make light of the situation. When I'm laughing, I'm not joking about what happened. It's more about the fact of how times have changed. Like 130 years ago was very different with how law enforcement handled these types of things. And it was a lot more just hearsay. They had to go off of circumstantial evidence. They didn't have DNA evidence back then, or anything like that. But then there was also this risky two-stage timeline. So killing Abby upstairs unseen and then hanging around the house until Andrew returned to kill him in broad daylight without anyone noticing and without leaving obvious traces. I think that is the strongest point about why she maybe didn't do it. Because if you think about it, there was time that occurred between Abby's death and then her father's death. And so it's like, how could she ensure that nobody would be coming into the house that day, during the day, or coming upstairs to see Abby's body there? She didn't even try to move Abby's body. Apparently, where Abby was laying is where she was found when she was dead. So it's just like, okay, there's something interesting about that. The body wasn't hidden. Could it be premeditated to that effect? Yes. But, we just don't know. So her inquest answers made things worse for her, though. So there were supporters that admit it kind of zigzagged. So her own doctor, Seabury Bowen, that was the doctor's name, had given her morphine. And at trial, he agreed it could explain some of the confusion with why her answers kind of changed over time. But the judges later kept her inquest testimony out of the trial entirely. Now, in the trial, it opened in New Bedford on June 5th, 1893. So it took a little bit of time, almost a year later. Prosecutors were Hosea Knowlton and future Justice William Moody. And then the defense team included ex-governor George Robinson. And in a really big moment, the state produced the Borden skulls in court. Talk about something that you really don't see nowadays. Very, very odd to use that. Usually we use pictures, rendered models, things like that, not the actual bones. Like, kind of crazy to think about. Again, I'm laughing at just picturing actual human remains in court and like a jury seeing that. It's just like, it's wild to me to think about how things were done back then. Apparently Lizzie fainted at the sight of them. The judges excluded the prussic acid episode. The judges excluded a lot of stuff. The police didn't do a great job. I mean, it's crazy to think about what happened, but the jury acquitted her on June 20th after about an hour and a half. And they argued that the state hadn't met the burden of proof, which I actually do agree with that. I don't think, from what we know, everything was circumstantial. I don't think that they had met the burden of proof. So I agree with that, but there are some things that are just like blatantly okay. But afterward, Lizzie and her sister Emma moved up here to Maplecroft in this house that we're building, and her new life house on the hill with servants, carriages, theater world friends. So it goes back to this idea, and this is why I wanted to present the whole thing with society and this area at the hill, because that's where the rich people lived. But they didn't live there because her father was frugal. And so the fact that after all of this happens, right after, the first thing you do is move to an area that maybe you wanted to be in and reside in the whole time. It's a little shifty to me. Fall River never really forgave her either. Like, this was a struggle for her in her life at this time. Emma moved out in 1905 and never came back. Lizzie died in 1927, and she's buried in Oak Grove Cemetery near Andrew and Abby. It's a bit crazy to me. Like, the whole thing has a lot of holes in the story that we can't fully explain, but we also can't fully, refute some of the stuff either. That is the story. Let me know in the comments below if you think she did it or if you think she didn't do it, and why. I'm curious to know. Now, this is a super high level overview. You can definitely get sucked into the rabbit hole with this story. There are tons of Reddit threads, so many, like Murderpedia has a lot of stuff on this, but that is also not like a super reliable source. So I didn't include stuff from that either, but there are a lot of speculative things that people like to go back and forth with this case on. I'd be curious if some of you are more experts on this and have followed it, rather, maybe not experts, but have followed it for a long time. Maybe some theories I didn't discuss that you think are actually true. And I really enjoy thinking through the why and who and how. So, earlier I said I love murder mysteries, and it's really just more about the puzzle of it. It's not that I enjoy the fact that someone passes away, especially in such a brutal way. But it's just more of getting in people's heads and understanding why they did that, or how they got away with it, or if they did get away with it, or who you think it actually is if they didn't find out who did it. I don't know. I just like answering questions and like puzzles. I'm currently working on the first floor now. I have the foyer area laid out. I'm working on this front like parlor room is what I would call it. It's like a big living area, and it had a grand piano in it. And I was trying to match the tones of things and the same pieces of furniture. And later you'll actually see there is a box in the upper left-hand corner where you can actually see what I'm looking at in the model and reference it that way. Now, one interesting thing that happened with this that was a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. The original house is 3 stories. I only did 2 stories. And the reason why is whenever I got to the inside and really started to try to figure out the floor plan, again, y'all know when you try to recreate things in The Sims, the proportions are all over the place. It doesn't work out super well. It just wasn't working well enough. I had to actually widen the house whenever I started doing that. And it took me forever to fix the upstairs because there is this diagonal portion that gets a bit tricky to work with. Y'all know how diagonals are in this game. Whenever you put the roof on top, because I would rather it emulate the structure than to have the floors and the outside look nothing like the actual house. But in this game, when you have a roof on top, if you want to put a 3rd floor that has the roof over it, it's really hard to do that, even with a short wall height, unless it's a really wide house where the roof pieces will cover up the tops of the walls. So I literally could not put a 3rd floor unless I added like 5 more tiles wide to the house, which was going to make it way too big, and it would have looked so weird and not good. So I was like, I'd rather it look like the actual house from the outside and just leave off the 3rd floor than to add the 3rd floor and emulate the layout and the floor plan inside, but then the outside looked nothing like the house. So that's what I opted to do. It is 3 stories. I only did 2 stories, but even with that, it's still a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath with just the first 2 floors. It is a huge house. I think that is where a lot of speculation comes for me on why she did it, because it's just like you can really see the motive. Hindsight's 2020. To me, I still find it super odd that the first thing you would do is move to a more uppity part of the town. And that clearly shows that she had dreams and aspirations of living this lavish life, and her father was preventing her from doing it. And so I think that there is enough motive there to why she would do that. Now, the anger and hatred behind, if she did do it, the anger and hatred behind it, the act itself, I don't know exactly what that would come from. I feel like there were other family dynamics that we just won't know that were happening. Obviously, we don't know the insides of these people's lives. It's not like social media is now, where you can get a general idea of people's day-to-day lives and understand what's going on, because people talk about anything and everything in their life on social media now. You can literally know the most intimate details of people's lives now, just people you don't even know, because they'll spill everything on social media. And that's not the way it was back then. So it's like we really don't know. From on the outside, she was a church-going, high-class member in society. That carried a lot more weight back then than it does now. Now, there are some really fun, quirky things about this house, and I was trying to leave that in as much as I can. So we're working on this dining space here, and what you'll see is with this wraparound porch that we have, there is one of the windows that's in the dining space that actually looks into the porch area. So I thought that was actually a pretty cool thing. That's one thing I like about older, like kind of Victorian style homes, is you get really weird nooks and crannies, and there are several of them in this house, and just weird, quirky touches. Like you'll definitely see some in the kitchen when we get to the kitchen part of this. There's some weird things with the floor plan and layout upstairs, but I was really trying to stick to as many things as I could with that. And then the dining space turned out to be, I think, a pretty cool area. Now you can see I have the reference up in the upper left-hand corner, so you can see what I'm like actually looking at and trying to emulate. So I was trying to find some china cabinets. We have some interesting pieces of furniture. There are tables all over this build. Like every room had at least 6 tables, I feel like, and they were very unique in style. I couldn't copy them. I tried the best I could with what I could find, but then there were some really weird things. Like in the parlor room, you might have seen me put the crow down, but then I put a plant on top of it, and that's because there was actually in the room a stand with a plant on top of it like that. And so I just covered the bird up and pretended like the pot was sitting on top of the stand. And then we had this picture right here. I put the chicken picture because it just has an antique looking frame, but it's like we have this picture that's on a stand. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, it's a round picture. I haven't seen something quite like that before. And so it was kind of interesting to see some older types of furniture and pieces that they had back then. Now, I don't know if any of this furniture is actually Lizzie Borden's furniture. It could just be how they have it now for, I don't know if it's a museum or not, but for people to walk through, it could just be staged. But it is really interesting whenever you look closely. Now, one thing too that was really fascinating with this house was the use of the radiators. So they're obviously not operable anymore, or at least I hope they're not, because so many rooms, the radiators were converted to benches. And I know that sounds really weird, but they're literally benches. They put a surface, like a wooden surface, on top of the radiator, and then there's a cushion on top of the wooden surface. So it's literally like a seat. You sit on these old radiators, which was really interesting to see in the pictures. Now, I didn't like do that necessarily in the game. I did put radiators that were exposed that didn't have anything over them. If they were converted to benches, I just put benches and ottomans. I did not like put the radiator and then put stuff over it. I didn't want to like take it that literally, but I was trying to emulate some of the same things. Now, I'm getting some of the fun older pictures. I tried to find as many with like the old golden frames as much as I could. And in the dining space here, we have the wall sconces. I got the pears. Remember, she ate pears. She said as part of her testimony, she ate pears. So I had to put the pear picture in. That was intentional. I was trying to do some references to the story as much as I could. And then there was this like fake cake display over on this table, so I put the little treats there in the dining room as well. But there are tons of fireplaces. That's one thing I love about Victorian homes, so I did try to do that. And then there were these beams on the ceiling, and I tried to emulate that as well with the beam that we get. I think it's from Love Struck, so I did put those on the ceiling, and it looks so good. It turned out really, really well. So I'm happy with how that ended up looking. And then I tried to emulate the like ceiling lights as much as I could. And I think I actually left the ceilings alone. I did add a structure outside. So if you look at some pictures online of the Maplecroft mansion, there's like this double garage building outside. I built it and just left it empty. It's just like an empty shell because I can't see the inside of it. So I was like, I'm just gonna build the structure, and then y'all could convert it into anything you want if you actually end up playing in this house. I think it would be interesting to recreate the family and cast and have them live here. It'd be kind of a weird thing, but then you could maybe even try to get Lizzie to actually kill them in the house. Like have her trap them or something, or you could probably get a mod that is a bit murdery if you want to do that. Now, we had this room off of the kitchen, which is kind of like a pantry, essentially. It was a lot of hutches and had a lot of like just dishware and things of that nature. So I just put a lot of like shelves and displays in this room and tried to clutter it with some kitchen stuff. And just to match the vibe of the picture that we had here, this was a lot more common in Victorian homes. Like walk-in pantries, like big rooms that were dedicated to pantries, like butler type pantries. Now I pulled the decanters. This is one of my favorite objects if you're not familiar with it in Debug, and it has like different colors with the liquid in them, and it has this like classy, almost like Gatsby-esque type lining on the glass. I don't know, it gives me Art Deco vibes, so I really like it, and I like using it in older builds especially. But it's kind of a nice way to classy up your bar areas if you ever want to use it. And then I had an interesting time with the kitchen here. So there were like 2 or 3 different fridges, and one of them I think is just a freezer, but I just put like a big fridge that looked like a freezer over on the other side. And then we had this huge sink on the other end of the kitchen, and the fridge was catty cornered. The stove was way far away on its own thing. It was super weird. But again, I don't think it's like actually uncommon to have your spaces be quite like that in these older homes. So it's definitely different from what I usually do, and it did help me get outside the box. That's what I think I actually find more difficult replicating homes than just doing what I want to do, because you're trying to match the aesthetic of the furniture, but then also trying to match the color swatch. And so you just have to go through all your options and see what you can and can't do, and see what works and what maybe doesn't work, or what you can make work. And then this was like a super weird sink, like really weird sink. It's really long, but only the middle part was the actual sink. So it's all like an enamel or glass top on either side of the sink. but it made it look like one huge sink. I don't know. They don't make furniture like that like they used to. You know, it's just very interesting, the furniture that they had back in the day. Now, I did pull this from Grange Mudroom, but it looked really modern. So I put like all these old spots on it because in the actual picture that I was referencing, it was a little beat up and had scrapes on it and stuff. So I tried to grudge it up a little bit and just make it look a little bit dirty and worn. And that completely transformed it because let me tell you, it looked very pretty and modern. And then when you add those stains to it and whatnot, it definitely gives it a whole new vibe. So if you ever want something to just look older, you do have to kind of tweak with the tool mod a little bit, but you can definitely make it look old and run down by just adding those like stains or the holes. Like Vampires has some really good options with wall decor and decals you can put that look old. And then I put this little tea station with the cookbooks over on this other one because we have this little area next to the stove that has all sorts of kitchen objects and such that we don't really have in the game. I was like, what can I do to, you know, make this work over in this area? Now I'm cluttering up the top of the stove here, and as you can see, maybe it's a little small up in the picture. There's a toaster. I know I've ranted about this a few times in my builds lately, but I want a toaster in the game. I was upset when we got the blender. I know it's a dumb thing to be upset about, but I really want a toaster, and I can't believe we got a blender before we got a toaster in this game. I feel like more people at least have or use, more people use toasters, I think, than blenders. There are going to be people who are like, not me, not me. I get it. The general population, I guarantee you, especially if you have kids, you're using a toaster for breakfast a lot of the time. I guarantee it. Rather than a blender. People don't want to use blenders and have to clean the blender. It's not an easy thing to have to deal with on a daily basis. Toaster, it's really easy. Pop it in, pop it out, take the thing out from underneath, empty it, clean it out, and pop it back up. You know, people don't even do that, I guarantee you. A lot of people haven't even thought to pull out that bottom slot. I don't even want to know what's in the bottom of y'all's toasters. But I'm working on the floor plan upstairs now, and this is where all of the bedrooms are. So we have 4 bedrooms upstairs, plus 2 bathrooms. So we have a little half bath that's under the staircase downstairs in the foyer area, and that's perfect for guests and such. But I did find it a little weird that there are no bedrooms and no full bathrooms on the first floor. But when I think about it, I actually think that's pretty common in Victorian homes. It's like one of those things that you don't think about until you think about it, and it's like, whoa. Yeah, a lot of Victorian homes that I've seen, there are no bedrooms on the first floor. There are no full bathrooms on the first floor, generally speaking. Not for all of them, but I have seen that as like a common trend of sorts. We have this beautiful double door entry. I would love for us to be able to eventually get some French doors that are open instead of them being shut. Like just have a swatch or like a set of doors that are open. That would be a vibe. I'm tired of having to fake open doors sometimes whenever I do it. Now, the fun thing with this bedroom, other than the shape, is how the furniture was also laid out. So the shape is fun. The furniture is laid out in a fun manner. You actually have a bed that's catty cornered over off the side over here. And then you have a whole seating area on the other side of this bedroom. So even though the shape of the bedroom is odd, it's actually pretty cool with how it's divided up. You have your bed space over on the left side as you walk in, and then a whole seating area on the right side. Nowadays, you probably wouldn't see a seating area quite like that. That would just be like an office, or people would put a desk with their computer. I would make it a gaming space, but it's nice to have a seating area nonetheless with all those windows. That would be so pretty to be able to sit over there and work on something and just have all of the window space to look out at. I would say the hardest thing for me with this was just matching the style of the furniture. And then it's like the wallpapers, there were some that were like super like on the nose, perfect. And then there were others that were kind of close, but we need more floral and like leaf print wallpapers. I'm realizing like we have some really good ones that are really fun and eclectic, and also some that are like old, classic, timeless. And I think we could use a few more floral patterns in this game just for like a nice aged look. And I think it would work well so much with the Sims community, because Sims community, generally speaking, not the entire Sims community, but a lot of us like to do like cottagey, cozy builds, like old, rougher looking builds, rustic. Like we really like that. And I think that like floral wallpapers would be really, really great for builds like this, and then just those cottagey vibes in general. So I don't know. I really would like to see more floral wallpapers. That's all I'm going to say. I'm saying it like 6 times. I'm trying to manifest it for us. Let's all join in the manifestation. Now, I will say the clutter phase of this was relatively simple. It was a lot of candles, like on literally every surface, candles, florals, and then just pictures. Now, this is also another complaint of mine, is that we need more pictures that sit on shelves and surfaces. Like, I need more framed pictures. It would be nice to have a set of older looking pictures like that too. I was trying to find as many old looking pictures as I could that would work, but then whenever we got to the framed ones, I'm just like, I don't know. Some of these don't work very well. They look a little too cartoony or like too modern, or it's about taking your shoes off, and it's just like, that's not the vibe. That's not the vibe at all. So I didn't want to use those. But now you can maybe see in the upper left hand corner, that's a radiator. That's a radiator under the windows, and they just put a bench on top of it. Like, they put a hard surface with a cushion. So I just wrapped this area around with ottomans. I think I used their life and death one because it's pretty small and it fits in pretty easily. But this is a really cool area, I think, with the room and how it wraps around the windows, and trying to find things that work really well. Now, I love this hutch that we get in for rent. One of my favorite things to use in houses like this. It is a bit odd because with the tiles and the squares that you actually see when you place it, it's pretty big, but from a standpoint of it fitting up against the wall, it isn't very wide off the wall. So you can walk by it relatively simply. One thing that really, really bugs me is the color of the pillows. So I think it's like three of them are this off-white color, and then one is red. And y'all, I was committed to the bit. I was like, I'm leaving it. I want to change that color so badly. The one red one is really, really bothering me, and I almost crashed out from it, but it is what it is. I got over it. If I can get over it, y'all can get over it too. Now we're working on this other bedroom, and this one has a really interesting vibe to it. It has like the granny wallpaper. I don't know. This feels like a granny wallpaper, and it has a really cool floor design that I tried to emulate as well, with how it wraps around. It's not just like a plain paneling. It actually has this like square shape to it overall. So whenever you get into the custom tile design, you can do some really cool things. I play with that actually quite a bit in my builds, I feel like. And then there's like a mannequin in every bedroom, which is a little weird. I get, like, from the staging standpoint, maybe these are actual outfits of Lizzie Borden that they're showcasing. Like I said, I don't know. But I did put actual mannequins, and I tried to, if I couldn't match the actual color, I tried to at least go for the style, if not the style of the clothing, at least the style of the room in some cases. So I think there were a few that hit the nail on the head, though. The one I put in here was perfect, and it has some really fun kind of Renaissance vibes to it in a way. I put the little quilts here because we did have that at the foot of the bed. Like, this is the one I end up using. I love that mannequin so much. That's my favorite one in the whole house. And it's funny that I have to say that because there are multiple ones in this house, let me tell you. I think the trickiest part for me was with all the tables, using enough variety, but also trying to match the style the best I could. So there were some where the shape was really, really spot on, like the one I had before this one, but it didn't work very well with how far out it stuck from the wall. And I wanted the sim to actually be able to go into the bed. So I ended up using this table instead because it's more flush with the wall. It doesn't stick out super far, and it still is kind of the same shape as you can see up close right here. But I was putting some of the same types of books. I put magazines that you see like in this picture here with the same type of lamp. The base of this lamp that I put versus the actual one is really spot on. It's kind of crazy to me how well that worked out. And then some of these wallpapers, it's just like so close. Like, literally the rug in this room matches the wallpaper that I put in The Sims. Like, it's like crazy how much they match. And then the cottage living furniture came in handy, generally speaking. Base game came in handy a good bit too in this build, honestly. And then I think I might have used Horse Ranch a little bit, but I used a lot of packs, don't get me wrong. Now, I had a jump scare here. I actually got scared whenever I was working on this, and I went to the mirror and I saw the mannequin on stream. It freaked me out. Like, it legitimately freaked me out. I didn't know what it was at first. So that was kind of a funny moment on stream, which, by the way, if you want to hang out with me on stream, I do stream over on Twitch. If you want to hang out, we do some other games over there too. I know that The Sims right now with the sell with EA and everything is very controversial, and there are big names in the game like pivoting a little bit. I am going to stay on the topic of I'm definitely introducing other games. I play other games already, but I end up playing some other games like Stardew Valley. Luma Island is one that I've played a lot, but I basically play like other sim games, other simulation games. That's hence my name, Dr. Sims, is not a complete reference to just strictly Sims 4. It's just simulation games. I've always enjoyed simulation games, and I'm really excited about Paralives coming out. I'm going to be playing that, but I have a laundry list of games, and then I do the occasional sub VIP only streams where I have lately been streaming some cozy horror games, but I like to do some variety content. Now, my YouTube channel here, though, will strictly remain, for the most part, simulation games. So I do plan on maybe uploading some Paralives content in the future on this channel. I'm not going to be posting like any off the wall random genres here. Okay, so you're safe here. If you're subbed here already, you're not gonna see like a big change in my content necessarily. I do have a VODs channel though. That's linked down below if you want to sub to that. That is where you can find literally everything. I post every single live stream over on that channel. We do just chatting streams, coffee chat streams. Like I said, we play other games. I do other activities. I've done Lego building streams. So if you just want to hang out for the vibes and our community, then you can definitely sub over on that, or just join on Twitch and then you won't have to. But if you miss the VODs, and you can always watch them on Twitch or over on YouTube. So even with the VIP sub only streams that I do, you can always watch the VODs. But anyway, enough about that. I'm now working on this other bedroom. This is the third one. And it does have a queen size bed in it, but it was not going to fit. This room is pretty small, so I went with just a single. I got the little skull one with the flowers on it. Essentially, flowers were all over the place in this house, so I tried to opt for that whenever the vibes didn't quite fit. But I at least tried to match the shape of the bed frame and stuff like that for each room, just so I could still get the vibes that I wanted. Now, I did size down the love seat, if I remember correctly, just so it could fit, because I was really trying to emulate what we got in the game, and they liked the catty corner furniture. It's kind of cute and fun, but in a way, it's just like, just put it up against the wall. Like, I get why you want it to face that way, but in this, it's a bedroom. Like, why do you need to be facing the bed? I mean, I could think of a couple of reasons, but I'm not going to say them. Now, here I actually layered up some of the plants just because I liked how the base matched the picture. There was like a square planter, but then it actually had flowers. It wasn't just a plain green plant. So I like overlaid it and sized it down. I used the tool mod just a little bit, I think. And then it ended up working out. I like combining objects. Y'all know I do it all the time. I say it all the time, but you can get pretty creative in The Sims. There were even some parts outside with columns that I overlaid, which I've done several times at this point to make kind of my own column. So I encourage you all to get creative with things. If you don't have quite the right object, overlay them and see what you can create, because there are so many possibilities in this game to make things work the way you want them to. Make the game do what you want it to do. Don't let the game dictate what you have to do. Bend it to your will. As much as I hate DLC and there's so much of it, I would take a framed picture kit. Like, just give us a kit with all sorts of different styles of pictures that we can clutter with. That would be phenomenal. If you could give us like 60 different options and keep the price the same or cheaper, that's a winner for me. I will pay $5 for 60 plus frames. That's all I'm asking for, 60. Just do it, make me happy. Y'all are in deep water with a lot of people. Just give us some nice stuff for cheap, okay? At this point, you're already losing money. You might as well try to keep people hanging on. You know what I'm saying? But on that note, because I do realize I went off on a different tangent, I got distracted, my ADD brain. There's a lot of stuff happening with the sale right now. It's still so premature. And I know this isn't going to age very well depending on how it goes, but we just don't know, right? We currently don't know. The sale isn't finalized yet. It's not going to be finalized until I think like over a year from now or next year or something like that. So it's just kind of like, I don't want to make rash decisions until we know. We talked about this on Twitch. I 110% applaud those of you in the space, like the big names in the game, taking a stand, dropping out of the EA Creator Network. I applaud it completely. I would just say, don't target people for still playing the game. If you're in the Sims community, that's not what this community is about. You don't alienate, you don't target people It's quite the opposite. This has been such a welcoming community, and this game brings me so much joy, and it has led me to meet so many wonderful people and create a community like on Twitch and here on YouTube that is so kind. Don't lose sight of that and what the game has done for people just because of the hands that it's in. And you can't fault creators for if this is how they make their living. They may not be able to just drop out of the EA creator network on a whim. Like, they might not be financially stable enough to do that. They might have kids that rely on that income. So I'm just going to say this right now. Don't go after simmers who still choose to play the game, because you don't know their circumstances or their situation. Everyone's situation is vastly different. I applaud people who are able to do that and stand on business and can do that and can pivot and still have a huge audience that will follow them. Not everyone is in that situation. So it's a bit tricky for me personally, and I've gone back and forth on it quite a bit, because on the one hand, I'm like, yes, I'm still so small that I could pivot. But on the other hand, like I said, this game does bring me so much joy, and I have so much fun playing it. And I don't think that just because I play it means that I agree with the decision being made. But being realistic, someone with 1,800 subs right now is not going to make or break EA's decision. So while I could just completely stop playing the game, I honestly don't think realistically that's going to have an impact. And I know it's not always about the impact. It's more like if it's about your morals and all of that, I completely understand. But I will say, I don't think also letting them have the power over me to take away my happiness and joy from this game is fair either. So I enjoy this game. I'm going to keep playing this game. I might shuffle in new content. Like I said, I've been super excited about Paralives for the past 3 years. The build mode video they just released, I've been thinking about doing a YouTube video on it. I am so excited about some of the features that are in there that I might start playing that more often naturally, because I just enjoy it so much. I don't know yet. It's going to be so hard because obviously Sims has way more content. Paralives is an independent developer, so you can't have the same expectations on that front. But I really love the art style of the game. I love the features, and I think 5 years from now, if they keep working on it and it has a successful launch, I really think that game could go really far. And I would just say and urge anyone who is a big Sims fan like I am. I grew up on The Sims, Sims 1, 2, and 3. I played it avidly as a kid. It was my favorite. Don't put a lot of negative publicity on Paralives, okay? It's not going to be at The Sims level. You cannot put that pressure on an independent developer on making that game and having the expectation of it being The Sims or at the same level of The Sims, which I kind of say jokingly because The Sims is very broken. We know that it has a lot of things that still need to be fixed, but I primarily play build mode, and while there are obnoxious things in build mode, it's not like actually broken so much in build mode. It's more the gameplay that has a lot of issues. I'm able to be a bit more objective in a way with how I rank Paralives versus Sims, I feel like, whenever it comes out. There are a lot of things happening right now. The Sims community is very much in flux with the sell of EA and what's going to happen with that. And I just think we all need to support one another the best we can and not try to tear each other down, okay? That's not at all. If we start doing that, then there's no reason to save the game. There's no reason, because the whole point of this game is the community that's around it. And as long as we are uplifting one another and try to be understanding of one another, for the most part, there are definitely, some people, pockets of the Sims community. There's always going to be toxic people in every community and people you disagree with. I'm very much LGBTQA. I identify with that community. I am definitely someone who fights for inclusivity in games, but also in real life. Just because I'm going to continue playing this game does not negate that. So not to go down the rabbit hole too much on that, but I really think it's important for us as a community to come together during this time, because we all are so uncertain about what the future holds. And I don't mean to get so serious on a speed build video, but it's just been weighing on, I think, everyone's minds lately. And there's just a lot been going on. And this is my first video I'm uploading to YouTube since pre-TwitchCon and all of the things that have happened and creators dropping out of the creator network and everything. So I just wanted to address that. But let's get into the final build. I'll show y'all what I did with it and give you kind of a brief overview of what it looks like. So this is the build at a glance. You can see I was very intentional with the outside. That's what I was talking about earlier. This really does look like the house from the outside, and then the landscaping is actually pretty plain. I referenced a lot of pictures to see what the landscaping was, and it is like completely blank on this side. I think there's not even a tree here, but I just couldn't stand the blankness, so I added a tree over there. And then this is the structure I was talking about over here off to the side of the house. And so I tried to emulate that as best I could from what I could see in the picture. And believe it or not, the mailbox actually is here. Or at least in one of the pictures, there is a mailbox that's right there. So that's where I put the mailbox, which might seem a little bit odd. But just from a top-down view, you can see the wraparound porch here. And then again, the link to the actual house, and you can like tour it, is linked below. I'm not going to show y'all everything. I don't want to overwhelm you and put so many things on the screen. But we have our foyer area right there, the full parlor room. Like, this is such a vibe. Like, look at that. Yeah, so the ceilings I did leave white because that's what it is actually in the house. So no, I did not leave the ceilings unfinished. I mean, I did, but that was done intentionally. But I put some fun furniture in and around this part. We had the little llama. There was a statue and the real thing, so we put that there. And then you come over here. This is the little half bath. It's not even really like a full half bath either. It's literally a toilet. I couldn't fit a sink. So, you know, it's just a toilet. But in the real house, there is a sink. Then we have our dining room, which is so pretty. I love this with the beams. Could you imagine having a dining room like that? And then we have our kitchen space off of that. Just some hutches. These are the like little decanters I was talking about. And then we have our kitchen space. Very open. And then there's a staircase here. There's a closet that I put here. And then there actually is a trash can in the picture that's right in the middle of the room. So that's why that's there. That is done intentionally. I know it blocks the door, but that is how it is in the actual house. So I left it like that. But from a top-down view, that is what that looks like. And then when we head upstairs, you have this huge landing here, and then that big bedroom with the seating area off to the side right here. So pretty, the sun coming in through those windows like that. And then you have like a little desk space off in the corner. Literally everything is catty corner. I don't know why they did that, but that's how it is. Off of that, we have another bedroom right beside it. Now, another thing that's common in Victorian homes is having doors from one room to the next right beside. And so we have this bedroom space, and then there is a door right here that goes to the other bedroom, so shared in between. But then you have like this weird office, I guess you could say office space. That is right off of this bedroom, but there is an entrance off of the hall as well. And then there was like this little closet with a dresser in it. So that's what I was emulating there with that. And then when you come back out to the landing, you have the other bedroom here that I was telling you about. And then off of that, you do have a full bath right here. And then another landing. And then this is your primary that's on the end right here with the fireplace and a full bathroom off of it. So you do have another bathroom space right there. And then there was this weird room, and it was packed full of boxes. Like, it actually has nothing but boxes stacked up in it. Anyway, that is like a messy closet, I guess, for the primary bedroom. And that's the build, y'all. I had a blast doing this. I have a whole series that I dedicate, and I call it From Reality to Simality. And I did previously a pink Victorian home that's famous in New York. So if you want to check that out, I did watch a ton of videos to get the actual floor plan nailed down for that house. So I did put this on the gallery as Maplecroft Mansion. So if you want to check that out, play in it, build in it more, like by all means, would love to see like a renovation of this. It does use a pretty good bit of packs given the circumstances. That's a bit shocking that it's this many, and I'm sorry. I mean, it's shocking, but it's not though, really. If you made it to the end of this very long video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you sticking it out to the end, and I'll make sure I link that pink Victorian mansion build over here for you if you want to check out the tour video of that. Huge shout out to my Soul supporters. Thank you so much. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Okay? Bye. Y'all, I actually really like the idea of doing builds that have like stories to them. Y'all know how much I like doing lore when I build. Maybe I should like do more of these speed builds where it has like a backstory to it.